Okay, dudes, we've got some pretty good light in here right now, so I thought we would go ahead and open up this Fesley box and see what we've got inside of it. We've got a little baggie with some stuff I honestly did not expect to even be included. We've got a capo, which is cool. Looks like a set of strings, a few picks, a strap. Looks like a very poorly made strap, but it is a strap. Cleaning cloth, and the pick guard. Now it's already on there, so I don't know why they give you an extra pick guard. The gig bag's pretty decent. It's okay. We have an instruction manual as if you need it, really. This is a 12-string guitar, and it's acoustic electric, so it gives you a battery. You get an Allen wrench, a guitar case, strap, strings, 4 picks, a capo, an extra pick guard, which I don't understand why they would do that, and a cleaning cloth. Okay, it teaches you a little bit about the tuner and all that, how to use a capo, guitar care, how to adjust your truss rod over here, how to install new strings wrongly. Don't ever do this, people. Wrapping it like that. If I catch you doing it, we'll have words. All right, let's throw that away and see what we got here. I can't remember what these retail for. I'll put it up on the screen, how much these are. At first they offered to send me one of their electrics, and I was like, I have no interest in that. I really don't want to do that. And they said, well, you see anything else you would like to check out? So I looked at their website, looked at the acoustics, because I do not have a 12-string, and I noticed they had 12 strings. So, okay, well, already I can say this doesn't look half bad. Let's get you down here a little closer. Okay, one thing that's really always hard for me when reviewing guitars is getting enough light to really see the thing. So I try to only shoot this kind of stuff during the day, because you know, under artificial lights, it's so hard to see. But we can see here, it looks like we've got some kind of overlay on the headstock. It looks to me like maybe a very thin, possibly mahogany overlay on top of what appears to be, and I have not looked at the specs yet, appears to be mahogany neck as well. You can see the grain here. You can always tell mahogany because it has these little flecks in the wood grain, and also just the color of it. Deluxe edition, made in the PRC, the People's Republic of China. They have their own branded tuners on here, and it has been quality control inspected by Fesley. I mean, it's about what I expected, I suppose, for what it is and for the price. You know, the finish looks pretty good. They did a good job on the finish, I have to say, from what I can see so far. Nice glossy finish. You know, usually finishes on guitars like this, on this price level, they're almost invariably like a poly finish, like a polyester or a polypropylene, some kind of finish like that. You know, you never get like nitrocellulose lacquer finishes on guitars at this price level, because nitro is notoriously difficult to control. You know, it's harder to get that kind of finish. It takes longer. The curing process is much different. The process of applying coats and stuff and all of that is really a lot different. It just costs more to do that sort of finish, and I prefer that sort of finish because it breathes better. But like I said, for the price point on this, you know, so far, I am relatively impressed. That finish does look good. Let's see what we got here. Oh, but yeah, what I was about to say is, you know, I wasn't going to do any of these, but I decided to do this one because I do not have currently a 12-string guitar. So I was like, okay, well, they're going to give me a 12-string guitar, and they're going to pay me to do a review, all of that good stuff. So yeah, this will give me a 12-string guitar to mess around with. I haven't had one in a little while. The last one I had was a Guild. I do not expect this guitar to measure up to a Guild. That's kind of cool. You know, little chords, little guitar chords card right there. Kind of cool for a beginner. Okay, it's done all the measurements in terms of playability and stuff. We could even check those measurements. 1/10 What does that mean, 1th? I think you mean 1 ST. You mean 1 ST, guys, first. Okay, so the first string, first fret, should be 0.5 millimeters down here. So there's the measurements for all that stuff. But it's cool somebody, you know, has to fill that out. I don't, you know, who knows how accurate it is. Maybe we'll check that. Usually a sign of quality on cheaper guitars is how well did they do the rosette. And this one is a, this one's a sticker, basically. In case you're wondering, oh, you know, why does one guitar cost $3,000 or $4,000, you know, from a U.S. factory, while one like this, you know, can cost $200 or $300 or $400. And little details like that is one of the main reasons why. That, you know, the finish, all these sorts of things. Probably the most stable 12-string guitar I ever owned was a 1969 Gibson. I think that model was a B45 that had the trapeze tailpiece. All of the pressure of the 12 strings at full tune was transferred via the trapeze tailpiece to the rear back here. So that means that the whole guitar would have to crumple in order for anything really bad to happen. Usually on 12 strings, what ends up happening over time is the bridge will belly up, it will rise up and kind of push forward on the back side of the bridge, and then dip down here on the front edge because of the tremendous pressure of 12 strings. And I never recommend anything thicker than the very lightest gauge of 12 strings that you can possibly buy. Now, strings is one of the things, the first things that you should change if you buy a Chinese guitar, and I'll tell you why. It's not necessarily always that they use inferior strings in Chinese production guitars. They do a lot, but the real reason to do it is because even from the factory, you're often getting a guitar that has, you know, it's come all the way across the ocean. It has sat on a shipping container, and then it sat in a warehouse for a period of time before being shipped to you. So, you know, any number of things could happen in terms of climatic changes, like lots of climatic changes, particularly for an acoustic guitar, can be devastating. So if you get an acoustic guitar that's Chinese made, definitely inspect it, make sure everything is good to go. You know, look for little things like maybe separation on the binding and stuff like that. This one appears to be okay. I do notice some little imperfections up here on the binding. Nothing that concerns me, and nothing that's like separating or anything like that. It all actually looks pretty decent. The top, the spruce is not particularly close grain spruce, but it is okay, and I can actually hear myself. It's already sort of resonating with my voice even as I talk. Here's the model. It is an FDET280 Deluxe Edition. Now they make this in a cutaway as well. I think it might be the same price. In fact, I think it might actually be slightly cheaper. I like a full dreadnought usually, because, especially on a 12 string, because I never play up here anyway on a 12 string. It's just, I mean, you don't solo on a 12 string like that, or at least I don't really. So no need for that cutaway for me, and for to have the extra bit of chamber up there. I think you get a little bit, slightly more boom out of an instrument if it doesn't have that cutaway. You would also get even more boom out of the thing if it wasn't an acoustic electric. I'm not real fond of acoustic electrics because I very rarely, I don't play out really anyway. The only time I use an acoustic is like for recording. You know, I would just prefer to mic the thing up. I never use the piezo element. I prefer no acoustic electric, but this one already had it, and they don't make one without it. So this is the one we're going to be checking out. I wonder if it's got the battery in it. What do you do? Press this. How do you turn it on? Tuner. How do you turn this on? I do not know. Always get rid of your silica packets. These right here, they absorb moisture. Right now, they're okay for going across the ocean. I mean, you need that for going across the ocean, but you don't need that if you're going to be stored in any kind of warehouse anywhere in the United States in the winter time. That's just going to suck more moisture out of the guitar. But sighting down the neck, I've got a slight bit of back bow. But because this is a 12 string, that doesn't concern me. We will probably go ahead and tune this up the way that it is. And my guess is by the time we get this thing fully tuned, that little bit of back bow is going to raise up to a little bit of forward bow. I haven't looked at the specs again, but we do have mahogany back and sides on this thing, which look pretty decent. You know, it's not the highest quality mahogany in the world, but it is decent. Inside bracing. Okay, so this is kind of embarrassing. Sorry about the terrible footage here, but I thought I might as well go ahead and include this. As you can see, it's X-braced. It does have a little bit of scalloping on those braces. It's going to be kind of hard to see. I didn't want to take the strings back off to try to get these shots. You can also see the translucence through the soundboard there, so you can see it's you know, fairly thin soundboard. You can also see the reinforcement screws through the bridge plate, and you can see that the bridge plate is maple. And you can also see the two belly braces there, and those are scalloped also a little bit. Yeah, man, I would say I'm pretty well impressed with really the build quality for the price point on this thing. You can see the reinforcement screws there on that bridge as well. But yeah, for the price point, I am really well impressed. You can get a lot of a guitar on electrics for very, very little money these days. It's shocking, in fact, how nice of a guitar for an electric you can get for as little money as you do. Acoustics is another story. Acoustics, if you go in the sub $200 range on an acoustic guitar, very often you're just throwing your money away. I mean, and that's just a fact. Acoustic guitars are much more difficult and more expensive to build on the whole, and if anybody's cutting corners to the point where they're able to give you an acoustic guitar for under 200 bucks, yeah, they're usually cutting so many corners that it's going to be a piece of junk. But you know, some of you might look at this and say, well, that's too much money for me for a cheaper Chinese guitar. But I'm telling you, man, this is decent for what it is, and I've seen much worse than this. And like I said, at least so far, I can vouch for it. Let's go ahead and get it tuned up. Well, here's one reason at least why the tuner's not coming on. There's plastic over the battery, so we'll remove that and get that reinstalled, and maybe we can turn on the tuner then. All right, battery's installed. Let me see if we can... Okay, tuner's on now. So yeah, you just press the tuner button when you want the tuner to come on. So that's good. I thought for a second that they were going to make us plug in something to turn that on, but nope. Okay, that's good. Let me go ahead and set everything up here. I'll tune this thing up, and we'll listen to it. Okay, a word on tuning a 12-string. If you tune just one course of strings at a time and start it here and go from here down, you know, you're putting a lot of uneven pressure, and particularly this thing out of the box, I don't necessarily want to do that. Oh, and by the way, it is winter time now, so I let this thing acclimate in my house for a full day before opening the box. And usually, especially with acoustics, I like to do that because what can happen is if it's been on the back of a cold truck all day, and if it's been sitting outside your door for any period of time and it's winter time, you'll want to bring it in and let that slowly acclimate. Don't just shock it out of the box. I mean, and this goes for any guitar that you buy online. What happens is sometimes you'll end up with a bunch of finish checking, finish cracks, and even wood cracks where it didn't have to be that way because it just wasn't acclimated all the way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tune up a little bit each one of these, and I'm going to kind of slowly try to go up evenly. And you can hear it buzzing right now. That's because we do have a little bit, like I said, of back bow on the neck. But I'm thinking it's probably going to be about right though by the time we get the strings up to tune. And we're just going to get it in the neighborhood for this first pass, because we got to stretch strings and then tune again, and stretch strings and tune again, and you know, it's a process. If it's on a 12-string particularly, it takes a little bit, man, to get one in tune. You can't just go by your tuner and go one time through and think, oh, it's going to be in tune now, boink. You know, it's not going to happen. You're dreaming. Oh, what I was about to say earlier, before I interrupted myself, I have a bad habit of doing that. I'm sorry. When I'm doing reviews like this too, I will get like 50 things I want to say all at once. You know, that's the way my brain kind of works. There are two screws on this bridge. There's one here that's been covered up, and the bridge appears to be, if I had to guess, 3/4 inch. 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 3/4 in That is a painted wood. That's my guess, is that it's painted or dyed, and it's probably not real ebony. The fretboard is certainly not real ebony. It's I believe it's dyed. Something dyed, not something dyed as if I can smell it, but you know what I'm trying to say, man. But I don't know, maybe you could see that there. We've got a couple of covered screws here through the body on a belly 12 string like this, belly bridge. That's a good thing, because this thing is going to want to pull up at the backside. And if all you got holding it is glue, then, you know, you're just asking for long-term trouble. Eventually, all guitars, all 12-string guitars will have to have stuff like that, extensive work. That's just the nature of this beast. This is a instrument that really shouldn't exist. I mean, to be in all honesty. This is an instrument that's really on the verge of collapse as it is. And I mean, the forces on a 12-string guitar are immense. That's why I'd never recommend anything above like the very lightest gauge 12 strings you can get. Even with the most robustly built American-made 12 strings, you are going to have extensive repairs that will have to be done over time. That's the nature of the beast. That's one good thing about this is the tuner. I will say, tuners are nice on a 12 string. Another thing I'll say so far, the tuners actually seem like they're decent. You know, on a lot of import guitars these days, you just don't know what you're going to get. Some of them will really surprise you with how good they are, and others are just absolute junk. This one appears to be on the good side of that equation, so fairly happy with the tuners so far. They don't seem to have any hitches or like, sometimes, well, there was a little bit of a slip, but it's not bad. The first string usually that breaks on a 12-string guitar is this G string I'm tuning up right now, because it's the thinnest of all of them. And if any of them are going to break right out of the box, it'll be this one. There you go. I'm not good. I called it. Oh. See, that's just experience, folks. There's no substitute for experience. And I knew it was coming, but there's nothing you can do about it. You know, it's got to get up to pitch. The string itself, it's almost like it's holding a former shape that it wants to still be in. They do include an extra set, but it would be nicer, really, if they would include the set and an extra G string. But that'd be the first upgrade I make to this thing, is to change into some decent strings after this demo. G string number 2. It's always fun. It's so fun. Isn't this fun? Tuning a 12 string. It's a blast. Okay, already I can tell you the action at the nut is very high. The action right here is way too high for a 12 string. Either I need to adjust the truss rod, which it looks like I probably could stand to do. Either that or file out the nut slots. We'll try adjusting the truss rod slightly first. You'll see a lot of YouTubers particularly, which there's nothing wrong with that. We'll put a straight edge on the board and all that stuff and look at it. I don't do that. I just sight down the neck. I can see clearly. I've been doing this long enough. I can see clearly what it's doing. What you do have to do though is spread apart the strings here in the middle. And what you can kind of do sometimes is get some kind of object. We'll use the strap that they provided here. That's probably about all it's good for anyway, to be honest. So we'll just open this up in the middle. And you want to open it up enough that you don't mar up the strings with this tool, because it can cause a little weak spot right there and it'll just make them snap earlier. Usually righty-tighty, so if we're looking this direction, that's going to be moving this toward you. So going clockwise is tightening. That should bow the neck backwards. And I'll sight down it, check it, and it still needs to go a little further. Just sighting down the neck here, and I can see, hell, I can see the fret sprout coming out the edges of the fretboard. Now we're getting into it. Now that's getting pretty tight right there. I think that's going to be about as far as I want to push it, I believe. The board is pretty flat now. If it's still too much down here, we're going to have to file out the nut slots. And it is. It's definitely too much. Look at the, I'll show you something. Look here. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this or not, but when I push this string down, see, watch how far it travels before it hits the fret right here. You see? Traveling, 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 finally hits it. Look right down here on the side facing the nut. Watch this. The distance that it has to travel, first of all. Look at the bend down here. You see how it's going across the nut and it's going straight down into an extreme dive right there? That's difficult to press down. You're pressing two strings at the same time, and for beginners in particularly, that's too much. It's one of two things. Either you're going to end up returning it if you can't play it right, if you think that the setup is too high, if the action's too high, you're going to want to return it. If the action's too low, you're going to want to return it because it's going to buzz. So there's a happy medium there, and I get it. I get why they set it up. They'll err on the side of it being slightly high. But see, this was in tune. And the reason it's not in tune, because I'm playing that E right there, and I'm having to bend that string right, but well, those strings, that course of strings, the G's, I'm bending that so far that it's throwing it up out of whack. If you have a guitar, it's like, okay, I tuned the guitar, but then I'll hit a chord, like even a cowboy chord, like an E or an A or an A minor or something like that, and then it's just crazy out of tune. Well, sometimes the reason for that is you haven't set the nut up properly. One thing I did want to look at, oh, yeah, see, look, they give you an extra, I don't know, why do they give you this? What good is this? I don't understand, because it's the same side as this. I would understand it if it was the opposite one, where you could like go for the, you know, the ultra country look, you know, where you could have the pickguard on both sides. That would be kind of cool. Putting anything on the top of a guitar is going to dampen it slightly. Everything that you do to an acoustic guitar makes a difference. Sacrificing a tiny bit of tone to have that kind of look. If this was black and it was the opposite guard, that would be cool. Why don't you, Fesley, there's one for you. Instead of sending this, which is completely useless, I don't know why you do this, that's weird. Weird. That's really weird. Maybe these have a habit of yeah, well, okay, I see it's pulling up. See, it's already pulling up here on the front edge. So now we know why they send you an extra one, because sometimes these will get damaged, I guess, in shipping. Anyway, we got some work to do. Okay, dudes, I got this 12-string Fesley up on the bench because we have a little bit of work to do on it. It has some very sharp fret ends, and we're going to take care of that right now. Well, I say very sharp. It's just kind of annoyingly sharp, but it would definitely detract from my enjoyment of playing the instrument. Here, I'll give you an example. Look, watch this. Let's run this along the edge. Listen. You see it catching? See, it's catching at every fret. That one's big, that one's big. See, every single fret end, really, both ways. So we're going to take all of that off. And we're going to do it with this file right here. I'll start with this, and then we'll come back with a fret file and we'll round those edges. I rarely show this kind of crap on my channel because there's just so many people doing it now that it's you know, it's just hard. It's hard for it to be entertaining after a while, I guess, you know. And plus, there are people who just do it better than me, and they explain it better than me. So I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to compete with those channels. And that got the vast majority of it. You can actually see the shavings there. If I zoom in, you see the amounts of shavings. Now, some of that is a little bit of the finish, but it's mostly the fret. I'm going to run it a couple more times. I'll zoom in here a little bit more here so you can see, hopefully. But you see right there, I'm not hearing any metal on metal. So that's pretty good with this file. We're going to come back in and we'll use another file to round off the edges a little bit closer. But now we'll go to the top side. And this one's really bad. Yeah, this is really bad up here. Okay, now all the metal sound is gone when I'm running this up there, and it's just into the finish. Now, you can see all the dust here. A lot of that dust is definitely finished, but there is some metal mixed in with this. But you see, just it's barely any finish has been taken off of that edge at all. and you'll never tell it. But you can definitely tell it in the way that it feels on your hands. I mean, that is a world better right there. Even if I were to stop right there, that is way better. I want to get these strings out of the way, just off the edges a little bit. You don't have to remove strings from your guitar to do this kind of work. There's some tricks that you can do, and I want to show you one of the tricks right now. First of all, I want to get the top E and the low E off of the edge of the board. So I'm going to loosen this one and this one, and I'll loosen these two, the high E's. This one I pulled out of this slot and I moved it over to here, and this one I'm pulling out of this slot. I'm going to move it over to there into the B string slots, just to get them off of the edge of the board here. So I can grab that up. I'm going to put that over here on the other side of the A. Hopefully it stays there, and it looks like it might. Alright, this one will go up into that slot of the A, and they're going to stay just fine. And see, what that's done is that's gotten these strings away from the edge. So now I can work on the edge and not have to worry about breaking any strings or taking these strings off. I'm going to put this glove over the strings so the clamp that I'm about to use won't mar the strings up. So put that leather glove over that. Then we'll take like a clamp. This is like a wood clamp. I'm just going to put it over the strings like this, like so. Basically just bunching the strings up, and now they're far away from the edge of the fretboard, so I can work freely on the fretboard edges without the strings ever getting in the way at all. I could actually, if I wanted to, tape this off, come along the edge like this. I like to go all the way up to the edge of the board and all the way to the sound hole on this end. And if you wanted to, you could even go too deep, like put another piece out here so it's thicker. You could even put two pieces on, so if you're really afraid to mar up your finish. See, now I can actually come up here and get all these upper frets without marring up the finish on the guitar. And you hear all that grinding, that's metal on metal, so that's light years better. I know light year is a measure of distance, not of time, so off. I was telling my daughter the other day, I was like, about the speed of light, and I was like, you do know that when you look out into space, you see a distant star, you're actually seeing back in time. And she's like, what do you mean back in time? And I explained the whole thing, about the speed of light and all this stuff. And she was all into it, man. It's like, oh man, you just blew my tiny, fragile eggshell mind. Yeah, these are actually really good now. Like I said, I normally wouldn't even bother with this, except I'm showing you guys how to do it. And if you get one yourself and you feel the need, you can get a little file like this. This is the file I really recommend you splurge and get the Stuart McDonald file set. Fret and nut file set is what they call this little set. There's a lot of alternatives now to Stuart McDonald, but I do recommend getting at least this file set from Stuart McDonald, because this has lasted me for over 10 years. I've had this little set, and it has done probably 100 guitars or more, and it's still going good. There is a rounded edge of this file, and there's a sharper edge of the file. Now, if I use the rounded edge of the file, I can actually come down here and get right on the fretboard, and I can just basically take out the sharp edge. And what I do is just kind of come in from both directions. I probably should have left that tape on until after this, but oh well. And what I like to do is just kind of roll it up and then around, and we'll do that basically to these first couple. I'll show you these first couple, and then we'll do all of them off camera. It's the sharp edge of the fret, the extreme edge that we're getting here. You can see I'm gonna just take that sharp edge off, and you can hear that right there. So take the sharp edge off, and like I said, I kind of roll it up a little bit. Okay, so they're pretty much all done except for this last couple, and I wanted to leave those so that you can see the difference. So if you look here, this one has been done, and you can see that these little corners down here are rounded off a bit, and this one has not been done, and those corners are still jagged, and that can make a big difference in terms of feel of the neck. It can really make something feel like from here down it's really slick, and it feels great. And if I wanted to come back in here and polish these up even further, I could. I'm not going to bother with it, but I could do that. You know, come in here with some really light sandpaper, like some 1500 grit or 1000 grit or something like that, and even, you know, just polish these ends where they would start to really get nice. And if I wanted to spend even more time on each one of these too, I could make each of these fret ends really start to ball up nicely. You know, if I sat here and angled the file and did the whole thing, I could. It's hard to do this and film at the same time, but you get the idea. I could come in here like so, and make a nice little perfect balled up fret in there if I wanted to do that. But yeah, that is 100 times better on the feel of that, so that part is done. Now we're going to address the issue with the nut. Okay, but what you want to do is you want to take your set of feeler gauges, and you want to measure the height of the fret at the first fret, and put a capo here so that the strings are fretted at the first fret. Then you can go through your feeler gauges and start shoving different combinations of your feeler gauges up under these frets at the first fret right here, and see if they fit. Just keep adding to that until you find the point where they won't go under there easily anymore. Then you have found the height of the first fret essentially. Now it's getting to the point where it's starting to catch a little bit, which tells me that that's about right. So what we have there is a 0.046. It depends on what you want to start with, but I like to add about somewhere between 10 to 15. We'll start about 15 or so, 16. We'll go with the 30 and the 32. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our feeler gauge and we're going to put it back under the strings, but we're going to put it up here at the nut. And a lot of times you'll find that there's a bunch of garbage. Like in this case, there is a little bit of glue garbage up here right next to the nut, which might be throwing my feeler gauges upward slightly. So as I put my feeler gauge in there, I'm just going to kind of move it back and forth there to knock a little bit of that glue out of there. On the low E string on acoustic, you want to use the biggest one possible, and I'm going to use a 60. This is the thing, this is a Stuart McDonald set, and they don't point at which one is the thicker one on any of these, so I went through my set and wrote them on here. So we'll do this string first, and the same thing on this end of the fretboard. You're going to have to push this down all the way against the fretboard, and this is the best way to do it so that you don't screw this up, because like I said, it's way easier to take material out than it is to try to put material back in if you go too far. So you put your feeler gauge on here, and then you start to file, and when you file, you want to point the file right at the post where the string is going to go. In this case, it's going to go at the second post, so I want to point this file right at that string post so that it doesn't bind up whenever I get the string in here. Okay, and I'm keeping it straight the whole time. And I'm also angling it downward slightly, because you want the high edge of this to be on the front edge, and you want it to slope slightly down with the headstock so that, you know, none of this binds up, because all of this is going to improve your tuning stability and all of that, because these strings won't be binding up all the time. Okay, now that you could hear it hit the feeler gauge, and it won't go any further now. It would just start eating into my feeler gauge. So as soon as I hear metal on metal, I stop so I don't mess up my files. And actually looking at it, I don't think it really took it down all that much. So you know what I want to do? I want to follow my first instinct, and I want to bust this 28 out. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these with the 30 and the 28 together, giving me 58 instead of 60. See, that's not even that much further. Now, since I'm here, I'm going to come up here and do this string as well. This gauge is about 47, and then we've got a 27 wound right beside it. So what you want to do is go to the next gauge up. So we'll go to the 32. So we'll use this file. Actually, I'm going to have to, instead of pointing this straight on like this, I'm actually going to angle this slightly to point over here, because this string is going to go to this post on this side of this post. So I want to point right at that, where that string goes, right? So this is the angle I want to try to maintain as I do this. And like I said, this is really important because it's going to help with the tuning stability by preventing the string from binding up at any point, because it's going to cross over this nut and it's going to go right to the post where it's supposed to. And a lot of times once you get here to the middle, it's going to be pretty extreme. You see where these strings are going, it's going to be like this. So you're going to angle it with the string. You don't go straight like this. That's where a lot of people screw up, you know, and you end up having to use nut sauce in the nut because you did not observe the angle right here at the nut when you cut the nut. Like I said, none of this stuff is rocket science, but if you just use some common sense, this is, it's going to save you. Okay. You can hear there that's getting into the feeler gauge. So now we can take those low E strings and move those back. I'm done with this clamp since we're not doing the edges of the fretboard anymore. I can take this off. I didn't even have to loosen any of these strings except for the top E's and the bottom E's. I'm not going to have to loosen any of these strings. All I'm going to do is move them out of their fret slots, which is, like I said, if you do a lot of guitars, this is the only way to really do it. I mean, if you're going to change strings anyway, sure, go ahead and take the strings off, you know, and then do it like that. Just get them out of your way, you know. But in this case, I intend hopefully not to change the strings. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this right here first. I'm going to check this low E pair of strings. I want to see how they feel, because if they're not feeling right, or if they need to go lower, which they do, these can stand to still go down quite a bit more. This is way easier right here than to play this interval on this string. That's way harder to push down right there. I mean, there is nothing like a good nut job.
Disgusting.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it down one more. So we're gonna go with 46 right there, or am I? Because isn't that what I said that this was, the height of this? I said the height of that was 46, which it is, but that, see, that's not fitting under there. I think the difference was we had the capo on, and the capo, when you put a capo right up next to the fret, it was bending it up further. So I am going to go with this. I'm going to go with the 46. There may be slight buzzes if you play too hard, but I would rather that than it to play difficult. I don't want it to be difficult to play. It's a 12 string. I don't pick hard on a 12 string. So I would much rather have the nut be really, really low at the nut than for it to be high at the nut and difficult to press down chords. That's definitely going to do it up for that one. So no buzzing. That's perfect. Now let's do the rest. And to do the rest, we're going to just use the same feeler gauge setup right here. So we're going to use this 46. This would have been a good time if I wanted to seriously upgrade this guitar, and we may do that in the future. We may seriously come back and upgrade this. If it turns out to be something I really enjoy playing, we may come back and do this. We'll replace this nut with a bone nut, and we'll replace the saddle with a bone saddle. And if it sounds good enough acoustically, I may even consider taking the piezo element out of the bridge, because I probably will not use this ever acoustic electric anyway, and it would be nice to have just a really nice sounding 12-string acoustic, and they sound best with no piezo under the bridge. Then you can slap a mic in front of it, and if you ever want to record with it, just record with microphones, you know, good microphones, will capture the sound of an acoustic way better than your piezo anyway. And again, observe the angle that I'm using here. And again, make sure you have this pressed all the way down to the board on all of these, otherwise they'll be uneven. This is a world of difference. This is absolutely night and day. If your nut slots are too high on a 12 string, man, your intonation is going to be way off. Every chord you hit is going to be different because each of these strings is going to be pressed a different distance down to the fret. Especially if you're doing these low cowboy chords and stuff, man, you're going to be way off. But this, now obviously I haven't even tuned yet, but that right there, that's night and day. I mean, now that I've got this thing up on the bench and I'm looking at it, I mean, this is decent spruce they've got on this. It was kind of hard to see in the first clips that I made of this, but looking at it, like I said, looking at it now in the light here on the bench, and it, you know, the spruce is not bad. It's not super close grained spruce, but it's not terrible either. I've seen worse spruce a lot of the times, and this is not that bad. You can see, you know, you can see the waviness in the light. You see the reflection right there, and you see how it looks like it's bumpy. That is moisture that has exited this wood because it, you know, probably spent some time in a warehouse at some point, and it, you know, dried out just a little bit, and there's a little bit of waviness in it. One thing I definitely want to do is, you know, just get it humidified a little bit. We'll record some tracks with it and see what she sounds like. Okay, here we are just after the first tune-up. Definitely a little bit of buzzing going on there. Let me see if that's something I can maybe adjust out with a truss rod adjustment. Probably going through and hammering down a couple of frets, but it's not that bad to the point where it's bothering me at the moment. I would just have to kind of remember to play softer on some strings. And if I wanted to fix that, I could come in and fix that. I could level the frets and all that stuff, but and yeah, yes, I do have a fret rocker. If I wanted to take the strings off and go through and rock all the frets and even hammer them down. I've got a fret hammer, but I also like using my little wood mallet because it does no marring whatsoever to the frets as you hammer them down. So that's a pretty good little tool to have around. A little wooden hammer for frets. This does bring to mind, though, something as far as 12-string acoustic goes, and something you need to keep in mind if you're going to play 12-string acoustic. you know, you don't really play it the same way as you would a regular 6-string. Like if you do a lot of single note runs and things like that, you want to make sure that you're doing all downstrokes. So if I was doing a single note run from like climbing up the scale, like, you want to make sure you do those in downstrokes because of the way that a 12-string has the courses. The higher string is lower down. So if you're doing upstrokes with a 12-string, a lot of times you're missing that higher string. So every other time that you pluck a note, you're only getting you know, half of the course. So if I were to go, see what I mean? It's different than going. If I go, see here, I'll miss that chorus on that second, on the A, and then I get both, but then I get just that one, and then, you know, so if you want to do all this on a 12-string, you have to adjust your style of play for the instrument. You know, and try to do everything in downstrokes. You know, instead of, a lot of times I'll even forget and I'll do like and do that last part in an upstroke, but really it's best to go. Alright guys, that's going to about do it for this FDET280 12-string. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And I have to say, you know, after doing all the necessary work on this thing, I really like this guitar. At some point I'll do some demos. I'll probably try to incorporate more 12-string in my demos on some of my amplifiers and stuff. Maybe lay down some acoustic tracks and play over the top of that. So you'll be seeing more of this thing on the channel in the future. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to say. This capo is actually really nice. This turned out to be a nice little bonus addition to this setup because this is better. This is a better capo than the Shub that I own, and it's a better capo than my Kaiser's. I mean, seriously, nice little addition. And you know, I'll leave you with a few words of wisdom straight from the Fesley box. Create a graceful tune. Enjoy a Fesley life. Every note is alive. Every Fesley has a living soul. The moment you lay your fingers on Fesley, you're starting a conversation with life, communing with souls, and changing your life. I mean, truer words were never spoken by Cardboard Box. So thank you very much, Fesley. If you want to pick up one for yourself, there will be links in the description. And for now, we will see y'all later.